Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Barb McCaffrey. I am the CII-CPAR project lead for the Alberta Medical Association Accelerating Change Transformation team, and I wanted to welcome you. We have a guest today with us, Emmy Cadron from Healthquest, who will be making some contributions, but today is about learning the mapping for primary care providers in Healthquest for CII-CPAR. Today's session is being recorded, so thanks for joining us. Before we get going and looking at the mapping, just wanted to give you some pre-go live tips and what happens before a clinic is actually live on CII-CPAR. First of all, of course, there is a registration and sign-up process with eHealth support services at Alberta Health. And there is some configuration or setup that needs to take place in the clinic by a clinic EMR administrator. And you'll see there's very simple instructions on how to do this. So how does CII-CPAR work in an EMR such as Healthquest? There are three types of data that flow from the clinic EMR through the CII Data Hub to Alberta Netcare, where it forms something called a Community Encounter Digest, and it also flows to something called the Healthcare Data Repository. The Healthcare Data Repository is new in Alberta. It collects information for the purpose of quality improvement and health system planning, and it is governed by the Health Information Data Governance Committee, which has representation by Alberta physicians. So let's first look at this encounter data and how it flows to Netcare and where it pulls from in Healthquest. The Community Encounter Digest has only been in there a couple of years in Netcare now, and it sits in a folder called Community Reports. So this is a sample Community Encounter Digest, and I'll tell you what is on there, and then we'll look at where it pulls from Healthquest. At the top, of course, is the patient's demographic information. The first section pulls encounters. So whenever an Albertan visits a clinic that is enabled with community information integration, it records their encounter, and this is meant to be a 12-month rolling snapshot. The first area records where and when they had an encounter with who, the reason the patient booked, and what the provider assessed the visit as. The second section is called Health Concern History. It includes, of course, the date and who collected it, but the health concern, which otherwise we usually call that a problem. The next section is called Possible Allergy. It's called possible because they do not need to be confirmed, and it is recorded when an allergy is recorded in the EMR. The next section is called Measured Observations, and it records blood pressure, height, weight, and waist circumference. Immunizations, if they are delivered at the clinic, get recorded and included in this section. And finally, referrals. And this is meant to record the types of referral that a patient is being queued up for. So in other words, in this example, if a provider is seeking a referral for urology, that gets recorded in this section. And it's meant to be there should that patient visit another provider or an emergency department, they would see that a referral of that type is already queued for that patient. At the bottom, you can see there is a disclosure message, and it's very similar to the terms of use of Netcare, which many of you would probably be very familiar with. This is another look at the data elements. The green elements display in Netcare and go to the Healthcare Data Repository. So the green ones go to the Community Encounter Digest. The white ones go to the Healthcare Data Repository, again, for system planning and improvement purposes. And the blue ones go to the Central Patient Attachment Registry, and they also do get copied to the Healthcare Data Repository. So there are some conditions. Of course, a clinic has to be signed up and configured, but another condition has to occur for the information to go to the Community Encounter Digest. Once the provider is registered, a patient has to have an appointment with valid demographic. The patient record is not marked as confidential, nor marked as physician only. And finally, the visit has to be done. before the information will go. And it is batched on a nightly basis. It is not instantaneous. So let's start to look at the fields that are mapped to flow from Healthquest to the Central Patient Attachment Registry and the Community Encounter Digest. You can see that there's a legend on the bottom. And on this page, it shows provider details and patient demographics that flow. You'll see that the legends show you the different places that the information displays. Okay, so I'm going to actually go here. We have a guest, Emmy, at this point. And on this page, you can see that there's the reason for visit, the assessment, and the observation fields. And you'll see that they are clinically configurable. And before a clinic using Healthquest begins participation on CII-CPAR, every provider has a mapping session with MicroQuest Healthquest. Emmy, do you want to talk a little bit about that mapping session and the configuration options that Healthquest users have?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Barb. There is a little bit of room for customizability within Healthquest when it comes to the fields in CII and what goes. The reason for visit, there's two different areas that you can use as far as what the reason for visit is. You can send the type, your appointment type, as what is going as the reason of visit, or you can send your short note line. So in this example, you've got annual checkup there, or you can send both. So one of the things that we do at Healthquest is we'll actually, once you've expressed that you're interested and you are in the process of being set up, we will actually then go in and take a look at your chart notes, and we'll do it on a per physician basis if there's more than one physician that's going on the program. And we'll take a look at them and see what it is that you're using, or on kind of on a standard. And if it looks like you're using both, then we'll ask that of you. We'll say, this is how it appears that you're doing it. Is this what you want to use? So you can choose to send just your appointment type or your short notes or both. And then the same thing goes for your charting. So we'll go through your chart notes on a per physician basis and look and see where it appears that you're putting your assessment notes. And for certain types of visits, you might be doing different chart notes, and that's fine. We can configure for different chart notes templates. So one field you might use, the field might be marked as assessment. Another field, it might be marked as something different. But as long as we can identify through what we do, like a pre-audit, what seems to be the areas that you're using, and then we'll come to you and say, hey, okay, this is how it looks. But you tell us, you tell us where you want us to map these fields to. Some clinics will actually just decide that they want to use a standard CII template, and we can name it that, and we can create the template to look however they want. They might just want a normal SOAP notes. Then they know right off the bat that the assessment field is what's going to go. Some clinics have decided they want just an extra CII notes box added to all of their templates, and therefore they know that anything they put into that CII notes field is what's going to go to CII under the assessment. So there's a lot of ability to customize how you're charting. You don't have to change anything that you're doing, but we will kind of do that pre-examination or pre-assessment of how you're charting, what your processes are, and then we'll meet with you or plan to meet with you, whether it's in person or virtually, depending on where we're at, and say, this is what we found. Now you tell us how you want to make it work. So that's kind of how we do our mapping. And the same thing goes for all the observation fields.
Okay, thanks, Emmy. And I know that because everybody has their favorite chart notes, that's an easy way to approach it. I want to point out at this time that you'll see that lots of fields do not map. And that's an important thing to point out. And when you're looking at it, and that is where you can see that when you're charting in those fields that do not map, that information always remains at the clinic, is not shared with Netcare. So that's an easy way when you're charting to say, oh, I know that information is not going to go to Netcare, and I'll chart some information I really don't want to share there in those fields. Again, you see that the problem list usually pulls from the problem in the problem tab. Medications and allergies are pulling from the medication tab. Again, you can see it's discrete data. Allergies is configurable in that field. Vaccinations, this is an exam template that has vaccinations on it, but again, you're fully aware when you sign up where vaccinations are pulling from. And referrals do pull again. So if you are creating a type of referral, this is what gets pulled into the Community Encounter Digest. And again, Emmy mentioned this, but once a clinic is in the sign-up process, they are linked with MicroQuest by eHealth Support Services, and then they offer that custom mapping session. So this is an illustration of how all those mapped fields pull together to inform a Community Encounter Digest. So it's one illustration that you can see of how visit information contributes to the Community Encounter Digest in Netcare. I'm going to show you another tool that helps with that as well. Again, data that maps to the healthcare data repository but does not show in Netcare is visible from these forms. And want to point out that there is a detailed guide. I'm going to show you that in a moment that gives you the information that you need for both setup and use of CII-CPAR. Also, the confidentiality features can be used if you have to document something in a field that is mapped that you do not want to share. You can do that and then use the confidentiality features. So there's several options available to users once they sign up, and always that option to keep certain information confidential at the clinic. So after encounters, the second type of information that can be shared from the community clinic to Netcare are consult reports. Any provider that receives referrals and writes consult reports can sign up to submit consult reports. And this is actually pretty simple. It's a PDF copy of what the office would also fax back to the referring provider. And I say fax back because that's how it's mostly done today. So when in MicroQuest Healthquest, a provider, the referrer or the consultant, chooses which letters to send to Netcare. And it's really simple. There's a send to Netcare button. And once the consult report is finished, click the send to Netcare button and it goes to Netcare. Also, that letter has to be linked to a doctor that is signed up. That's another important point. There is also an unsend to Netcare button. So if something goes and the provider says, oh, I want to take that back, they can click the unsend to Netcare button. If it is the same day, it will not be sent that evening. If it occurs the day later, because it goes up on a batch each night, it will be removed from Netcare and be replaced with a canceled message. So where do the consult reports sit in Netcare? They sit in the existing consultations folder, which most users are pretty familiar with. All right, so now we're going to move on to the third type of information that is shared from a participating clinic to participating in CII-CPAR. So those are the panel lists. So for a family physician, nurse practitioner, or a pediatrician that has panels, panels will move on a monthly basis from the community clinic through the CII Data Hub to the Central Patient Attachment Registry and copied again to the Healthcare Data Repository, where it's used for quality improvement and system planning purposes. Once the list goes to the Central Patient Attachment Registry, the participating clinic receives 2 reports in return. A couple days after submission, there are 2 reports that are available. It's a single report with 2 parts, excuse me. It's called the Demographic Mismatch Report. The first part of the report identifies if there were patients on that panel list that had become deceased in the last month. That report goes back to the clinic so that they can identify those patients and remove them from the panel. The second part identifies patients with demographic mismatches to the provincial client registry. And those mismatches are identified so that the clinic can clean up the demographics in the EMR. Large copies of these reports are available on the CII-CPAR Act Community Resources page. The second major report is called a panel conflict report. It identifies patients on the providers panel that's participating in CPAR where that patient already said yes at another participating clinic anywhere in Alberta to the panel question. So it identifies patients that are paneled at more than one clinic. It provides the demographic information, the identity of the other provider in clinic, as well as the last visit date and the last confirmation date for both clinics. And this enables the provider and team to manage that panel conflict. So in Healthquest, users can submit their panel to the Central Patient Attachment Registry anytime between the 1st and 21st of the month. On the 22nd of the month, CPAR has all the collected panels from all the participating providers across Alberta, and it's starting to do the matching and mismatching. And then on the 2nd of the month is when the conflict reports are available to the participating clinics. As I mentioned as well, their reports from CPAR on demographic mismatches are available 2 days after the clinic uploads them. So in MicroQuest Healthquest, it's actually pretty easy to upload the panel to CPAR. One day, once a month, one person has to go into the CPAR reporting area and can click the word called Submit All Panels, and they all instantaneously go up to the Central Patient Attachment Registry. Also in this area, this is the way that the clinic can view their panels before they are submitted by provider and double check on the demographic information and that each patient has a last visit date and a verified date. I know it doesn't show this on the screenshot, but this is really just test data from a test database. So now we're going to get to the really exciting part of participating in CII-CPAR, and that is e-notifications. So what are e-notifications? E-notifications are notice to a CPAR participating provider when one of their paneled patients has had one of a number of events in Alberta: an emergency department discharge, a hospital admission, a hospital discharge, or day surgery anywhere in Alberta. They come into the EMR very similar to a lab result in the lab result tab in a provider's appointment list. At a glance, you can see the date and patient name and a description of the event, such as a hospital admission. Also, team members with access to lab results can see them in their desktop as well. There is a tip there for team members on filtering on how to see e-notifications. So these are sent daily at 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. 7 days a week, again from an event anywhere in Alberta. Once it is opened, it provides additional information. The provider can see the patient demographics, the facility where they went, the date and time. If it is entered by AHS, they will see the attending provider and the admission reason. If that patient is paneled to more than one provider in Alberta in the Central Patient Attachment Registry, they will see on the bottom something that says additional provider notified. And this tells them that that patient is paneled to more than one provider and that they would likely want to manage that panel conflict when they are following up with the patient. So e-notifications are proving to be a great asset for clinics that are participating in CII-CPAR. So there is lots more information about this. I'm going to show you another place that I would recommend that you go for information. Some of what I've shown, all of what I've shown you today, is available on our website. So this is the ACT website. When you get to the home page, you can easily navigate to the CII-CPAR information through patient's medical home and panel and continuity. And from there, I recommend the primary care tools and resources page. From that, you can scroll down and you can see that there is an orientation for MicroQuest Healthquest, and that's where I took many of the slides that I showed you today. As well, there are some documents here in the MicroQuest Healthquest section. So I'll show you what those are. So there is a guide that provides more information than what I showed you today, and that is available to you. And the guide runs through the mapping as well as additional instructions on how to use Healthquest for CII-CPAR. There is also able for you to download in that section the CII data field so that you can have an idea about mapping. And it's good to keep this as well, not only when you're signing up, but later on when you're using MicroQuest and you're signed up, that you can have an idea of what those map fields. There's the data elements that map to CPAR, and this is available as well. And then a poster that also provides you a community encounter digest that matches the fields in the documents I just showed you so that you can make the connection between data entry and how it would appear on a community encounter digest in Alberta Netcare. So that's the main information we have for you today. While we're looking in the chat, Emmy, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from the MicroQuest side about CII-CPAR participation.
No, not really. I pretty much covered it all, Barb. It's just very customizable, and the most important thing is just, you know, ensuring that the physicians are comfortable knowing that they don't have to change the way they're working, and we'll work with them to make sure that it's the seamless transition.
Thank you. I see that there's a really great question in the chat, and while today's focus was on the mapping, the question is, how do we download those panel reports? So when a clinic signs up, they designate a person in the clinic as what they're going to be called, actually, the CPAR panel administrator. And this person will get login information to go to the secure online portal, which is the Central Patient Attachment Registry, and once a month download those reports. So they're a simple download onto your work desk into the clinic computer. And the second question, is the Community Encounter Digest already incorporated into Healthquest? That's a good question. So it is incorporated once you sign up. So the Community Encounter Digest, again, is a pull from designated fields in the EMR. I'll show you the example again. This is actually formed in Netcare and sits in Netcare. And every time an Albertan visits has a visit in a clinic that is enabled with community information integration, it adds to this record. And this sits in their record in Netcare as a rolling 12-month snapshot of a summary of their visits to clinics in Alberta. So it's meant to be a summary of visits to inform other providers or an emergency department of concerns that have been seen in the past and who saw them, so that an emergency department or another provider, maybe not the primary provider, would have an idea of how to treat them. I'll mention that the community encounter digests are being greatly appreciated by emergency departments. We have examples of stories where they've seen the CED, recognize that the patient is coming to emergency for a concern that they may have already seen with their family physician, and it completely informs their approach to treating the patient at that time. Looking for any additional questions. Do we need to get consent from the patient? That's a really good question. When a provider, first of all, participates, they will endorse the privacy impact assessment that Alberta Health has done for community information integration. But CII is covered under the Health Information Act, very similar to Netcare. So providers, once they sign up, are asked to post something in their clinic, and I'll actually just show you. It is called a health collection notice. We have it available in English and 3 other languages. This is a template and what it looks like, and participating clinics are asked to post this. This informs their patients that they are participating, and they do not need to get consent as per the Health Information Act. Our experience to date and information we have received from the evaluators at the Health Quality Council of Alberta of already participating clinics is that patients aren't really asking much about CII-CPAR. They might have some questions about Netcare if they weren't really familiar with it, but patients aren't asking many questions. And so this poster is the reason why a provider and team do not need to receive the consent of every Albertan.
Barb, I also just wanted to mention that we're actively working in the Edmonton zone with the PCNs, with the CII and CPAR. So we do have a bit of an advantage in the Edmonton zone, being able to depend on the PCN. So I guess I know there is a lot of PCNs on the phone right now too. So I'd like to actually say a thank you to you all. It's been wonderful working with you, and it's been a good transition for us, and we appreciate the work you've put into it as well.
Thanks, Emmy. And on that, I'll mention as well that not only can community clinics where we traditionally have a family physician and team enroll in CII-CPAR, we have primary care network managed clinics, a number of which do use MicroQuest Healthquest, that are already using, that are already enrolled and participating in CII-CPAR. So that is an option as well for PCN managed clinics. Great question in the chat about financial implications. There is no fee or charge to participate in CII-CPAR. Recognizing that there is quite a bit of paperwork to sign up, and so that takes time, and recognize time is money at the clinic level. As well, there is the requirement to update a clinic privacy impact assessment if it hasn't been updated in a long time, and that as well might take some time on the clinic's part. So what stage does it get to be updated is the question. So once a clinic signs up and they go through a process, they are informed of a day that we call Go Live Day. On Go Live Day, that is the day that they're all connected in the background, and MicroQuest and Alberta Health are all set up that everything's connected. And from Go Live Day moving forward, information starts flowing. And actually, the day after Go Live, the clinic is asked to look at their scheduler, take a couple PHNs, and a person at the clinic looks at those PHNs to validate that the information has uploaded to Netcare in the form of the Community Encounter Digest. So no information flows before Go Live Day, and that Go Live Day is mutually agreed upon between the clinic and the eHealth support services that supports the Go Live.
Hey Barb, can I ask a question too, please?
Sure.
So I'm wondering about the different customizable features within the chart templates. I understand that it's usually the assessment that would go up, but I remember in our Healthquest user group webinar we had with Dr. Chris Lay, he was having issues with different types of templates where that information was not going up, so he had to revert back to using his regular SOAP note. Does that mean that it's just one template style that it will pull from? Or like if we have multiple chart templates, like a COPD template, a diabetes template, and they all have that assessment piece in there, will it pull from all of them, or could we just pick, or is it just one?
That's a great question, and I'm going to be deferring this back to Emmy, but I imagine that during the mapping session, there is mutual agreement between the provider and MicroQuest on which forms or chart notes get mapped. And so they should be informed on that day. Emmy, do you have anything to add to that?
I know that different templates can be used, but I believe they have to be the same type of field. It's, in the background, there's ways that we identify the type of field that the actual field is. So I think that might be what the issue was. I would have to double check that with Mike to find out for sure. But I do know that there can be multiple chart templates used. Obviously, I believe only one per visit. But yeah, I would have to double check. I'm sorry, I don't know the 100% the answer off the top of my head.
I hear what you're saying though, Emmy, though, because so an individual could have multiple chart notes with a field called weight in it. And unless the back of those chart notes are mapped together, that all those weight fields are mapped to recognize as weight versus just a word in a box called weight, then they all won't be both mapped or nor would flow. But that information is available to each provider as they sign up. Sam, we can get back to you with some more information about that, about multiple chart notes and the mapping for MicroQuest.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. Because I don't want to make too many templates if they don't go up.
Right, because you're a template person.
Yes.
I'll definitely find out for you, Sam.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks.
I'll say thank you for participating then today. You can follow up with your contact from your PCN for more information as well. And we have plenty, as I mentioned, on our webpage, which gives you really a lot of details about what it is to participate in Community Information Integration Central Patient Attachment Registry. Thanks for participating today.